Root x plus root negative x is equal to 36. Find x. Take solution. If we take down root negative x, this is simply equal to the square root of, if we take negative 1 times x, it gives us negative x. We can break this. This will simply be equal to, remember, if you take the square root of a times b, it is equal to the square root of a times the square root of b. Applying this formula gives us the square root of negative 1 times the square root of x. And this will simply be equal to the square root of negative 1 gives us I, complex numbers, I times the square root of x. Write down root x, so it gives us I root x. In the given equation, we are going to replace the square root of negative x with I root x. Take note, the square root of negative 1 is I. Root x, that is root x plus I root x is equal to 36. At the left hand side, we are going to factor out root x times 1 gives root x plus root x times I gives us I root x. We equate this to 36. We are looking for x. We are going to divide both sides by 1 plus I root x times 1 plus I. Divide this by 1 plus I. It will simply be equal to 36 divided by 1 plus I. At the left hand side, 1 plus I will strike off 1 plus I. We will be left with root x is equal to 36 all over 1 plus I. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to rationalize this denominator by eliminating the complex number. We are going to rationalize this fraction by eliminating the imaginary part, and for us to do this, we are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of what we have at the denominator. The conjugate of 1 plus I is simply 1 minus I times 1 minus I all over 1 minus I. And this will simply be equal to 36 times 1 minus I all over, take 1 plus I times 1 minus I. We have to expand the brackets. We are going to start by expanding the brackets at the denominator. This will give us root x to be equal to 36 times 1 minus I all over, at the denominator we have to expand these brackets. 1 times 1 gives 1, write down 1. 1 times negative I gives us negative I. We go now to I times 1 gives us I plus I times negative I gives us negative I squared. Remember, I is simply equal to the square root of negative 1. If we square both sides, I squared will simply be equal to the square root of negative 1 squared. This and this will strike off and we'll be left with negative 1. This will give us the square root of x to be equal to 36 times 1 minus I all over 1. Negative I plus I gives 0 minus I squared, which is negative 1. This is simply equal to 36 times 1 minus I all over 1 minus negative 1 is the same as 1 plus 1, which gives us 2. This will give us the square root of x to be equal to 36 divided by 2 gives us 18 times 1 minus I. Next step, for us to get the value of x, we are going to square both sides, that is the left hand side and the right hand side, so as to eliminate the square root sign. Then the square root of x, all this squared, is simply equal to 18 times 1 minus I, all this squared. This will imply that the square root of x squared, this and this strikes off, we'll be left with x is equal to, we can break this as 18 squared times 1 minus I squared. Then x will simply be equal to 18 squared, which gives us 18 times 18 is equal to 324 times 1 minus I squared. 1 squared, we take 2 plus 2 times 1 times negative I plus negative I squared. Then x will simply be equal to 324 times 1 times 1 remains 1, which is 1 squared. 2 times 1 gives us 2 times negative I, negative 2I. Negative I squared is simply equal to, remember, I is simply equal to the square root of negative 1. If we take negative I, it will simply be equal to negative the square root of negative 1. If we square this, negative I squared, it will simply be equal to negative the square root of negative 1, all this squared. If we take negative the square root of negative 1 times negative the square root of negative 1, this will simply be equal to negative 1. Let's verify it here. If you take negative the square root of negative 1 times negative the square root of negative 1, is simply equal to negative negative gives positive. We'll be left with the square root of negative 1 times the square root of negative 1, which is simply equal to the square root of negative 1, all this squared. This and this strikes off, we'll be left with negative 1, which is true. Write down negative 1, close the bracket. Then x will simply be equal to 324 times 1 minus 1 gives us 0. 0 minus 2i will be left with negative 2i. This will imply that x will be equal to 324 times negative 2i. This will simply be equal to negative 648i. Therefore, the value of x for which root x plus root negative x is equal to 36 is negative 648i, where I is the square root of negative 1. We are done with the solution of this question. If in case you have any worries or any doubts, feel free to drop your questions at the comment section. Please, if you like the video, share and subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much for watching.